So as you see in this specific piece of artwork done by Alex Gray, it's a reoccurring theme in his pieces of art. The Earth is portrayed as the heart. So it's yet again another way to know for certain what's really going on here. And this is what I mean when I say if I had the artistic ability to depict some of my visions, this is how I would depict them. So, that's something to think about. So another thing I'd like to point out are these two nebulas I found in the program called Stellarium for Linux. So in this program, Stellarium, it's essentially just a astrology program. You can see what positions stars and planets will be in on a specific day. And I happened to come across these three nebulas, respectively Fishhead Nebula, Heart Nebula, and then Soul Nebula. So it's another tell. Heart and soul. And then the fish head. What was the fish symbolizing? No, it's the soul. So, quite interesting. I just felt that this video should be some more of me sharing some niche things I found. And you're going to be hearing a lot of that, so think about what's being presented. So the difference in the two visions is to be found in creation and, ironically, destruction. So we'll just phrase it what the mind has created for the earth and what the earth, or what the heart has created for the earth. Now, when we go into this, it's really easy to be like, well, what do you mean the mind is death? And I would just like to state that these teachings and this specific line of thinking, if you live within the realm of the mind, specifically now in the modern age with all these video games and movies and TV shows and books and whatnot, you'll come to the conclusion, if you're attentive, that something about the mind, thought, time is bound to death. And, well, if time is the cause of all natural death, then time is inseparable from death. And if something requires to be encased within something called matter, what we call matter, to decay, then matter is also inseparable from what is called death, which derives from the mind. And since the mind perceives, interacts, and engages with everything in the external world, not everything, but you see what I'm saying, it too is inseparable from the external world. So what does the heart interact with? If the external world is provably finite to anyone who really wants to actually be serious about this, if it wasn't finite, it wouldn't have resource shortages. We wouldn't have to worry about over-exploiting specific pieces of land for resources like, say, water. The resources are finite because we live in a finite partition of the infinite earth, which is being used for this death construct that no one can really seem to get their heads around because there's not anyone really talking about this at all. So the heart is creation, and it can be said that the mind is destruction, since all things that the mind creates are made of what? Well, they're made of matter, and what happens to matter? It decays in time. So there's a link there. There's a link between the mind, between matter, and between time. So there's a link between thought, matter, and time. And the functions of the heart do not lie within time. They do not lie within finity, if that's a word. So we could really easily put it like this. You have timelessness, that comes from the heart, and then you have time, that comes from the mind. You have formlessness, That comes from the heart. And then you have form, in the form of matter. That comes from the mind. The mind is a constant judgment gavel. In numerous ways, it's a reactor. And in every way possible, dualities occur, divisions occur. And this gets back to my point of desire really is the cause of all of this suffering, brought upon the earth especially, because it is thought itself, so the process of thought, which calls one to destroy or to take or to do whatever. So let's just put the example of war. You have one nation against another nation, and a peace, we'll just say Serbia and Croatia. So Serbia wants a piece of land that's now recognized as being Croatia's because it was a piece of Serbian history. So whoever's leading this army receives the thought that, this piece of land is priceless Serbian history, and we must preserve it. And we must go to war to preserve it. So with that thought, the war starts. You get a thought to, what's a more destructive thought? To lay waste to some of your own artwork because it's making your mind upset. Well, the heart is creation. Boundless creation, I might add. No mental limit. The mind is the limit, if you will. And this calls back to the idea of the sky is the limit. Well, if we view the mind as the sky and the earth as the heart, it kind of begins to make sense. The sky is the limit, and the sky is the mind. And that's another function of the mind, is to regiment and create barriers, limits from both actual truth and really people, animals, anything where separation could occur or could affect the mind. It will allow for it to happen. And you see that in drama. And this is also a really good point. Reunification and compassion. That's, in my opinion, a function of the heart for me, because it's not bound within time. It doesn't occur within time. For me, it's something which is timeless. And usually the mind will have you start drama with people, while the heart will have you try to bridge the divide and see through the flesh suit, and the mind of the other individual, which is causing whatever problem. So that's really the difference. What does the mind create for people, the earth, the heart? And what does the heart create for the people, the earth, and the mind? There's a distinct difference. And if the goal of all of this is to be free of thought itself, then one has to be able to fall out of the mind, which has many hooks, and into the heart, which there is no thought. So fall out of the mind and into the heart. How does one do that if one still has desire? If one has thoughts calling back to memories years ago? If one has any amount of thinking which is intrusive or cannot be silenced seemingly, how is one going to find out which instrument, which carrier of light is the true light? And it really shouldn't be difficult to discern which one's the true light. And, I've been on this mind is death path for a while, but, I'm young, so I don't really even fully comprehend what I'm doing right now. It's all very surreal. And even when I'm talking right now, I'm not judging any of what I'm saying. I'm just speaking from what has happened. And what has happened is we've been given a large wealth of knowledge as it pertains to all of this. And with the proper connections in my mind when they were finally made, sifting through this information was much less of a chore because we figured out why the mind is death and why all of these things really are so hellish. It takes about just look around, really. Again, observe the process of thought. What do you think moves people to kill people? Take the example of a serial killer. They have a psychological compulsion and obsession towards killing. What do you think makes them kill so much? Well, it's the mind. They hear thoughts all the time, probably. I mean, I can't speak for them because I'm not them. I'm one person, but I think you see what I'm trying to say here. The thought calls for them to satiate their weird desire, and they do it. And that's what all of this, for me, centers around, is desire. Because the thought calls to desire, and then one with the external physical body acts on the desire, which often causes destruction because what kind of system are we in? We're in cervix to a black comedy, dark satirical system where all of the words in our language are a part of this phonetic language key. And it's so obvious once you've seen it that, some of the people, I won't name who this is, but he's a relatively well-known individual on YouTube. He talks of the heart. I'll just name him. His name is Charles Carroll. He's a public individual. He won't mind me giving out his name. Even Charles himself, he knows of the heart. He knows that this place is governed by forces beyond us, and the two artificial lights of Lucifer are what the moon and sky are. He understands all of this. But even for someone like him, the idea of the maritime law or the law of the sea, the language key itself is disturbing, and that's understandable because a lot of those connections that you make with it are, well, it's surreal. You wouldn't expect all of those words to even relate back to each other in such a fashion, and lo and behold, they do. So it's either a matter of you're going to see it for what it is, I don't want to say a predetermined construct, but a functioning system, which has been in use for some time now. I apologize. It's a set of parameters that they have for the system, and the language simply is a key for it. And something that Chiron last stated was that the language itself, angle, so like anglerfish or angel. The language itself was architected and constructed by what we call angels, and sent down to the earth for people to see what this place is all about. And honestly, with all of the phonetic tells that we've been through, just me and you, I mean, that's not even a quarter of it. The whole language, I'm telling you, and every language. I think I touched on this reoccurring, quantifiable pattern in every known world language. I think I touched on it. It's called Zipf's law. And Zipf's law is a quantifiable pattern within all known languages. And I would really just encourage any viewer to look into that, because it really is, it gives an insight to just how mathematically structured all of this is. And I don't like to use the word predetermined because it calls to determinism, and that's a no way out philosophy in my opinion. But one can't shake off the fact that this has most certainly been done before, and is being used for some purposes of data accumulation. It calls back to the Isis rebuilding her Osiris. That's what it is. And I won't say too much on that because it's better left to you and your interpretation of that, what you think it means. But this entire place, I'm just going to say it doesn't have much time. I can feel it. People around me are starting to obviously start to feel it as well. And there have been some tells. A lot of people have been joking around. The darkness is coming. The fog is coming. Well, obviously something is about to kick off. And one would need to remain neutral and have the correct action. Correct action. Without being binded by the mind's duality and its limitation for decision making. You have to fall out of that completely. That's my personal belief. And, with someone like me who believes that the mind is death, it should make sense to any viewer as to why I would want to return home after finding out that this obviously isn't my home. And thus, that's why I feel so alien to all of you. And I can't understand why you all defend all of this stuff. I can't understand it. But I once, had made excuses for my, meat-eating drug usage. But there's no longer any excuses to be had because all of this is a finite temple. It really can be taken away in an instant. And I don't mean to fearmonger, but you must question. I'm constantly, not constantly, but it pops into my mind every now and then that every bit of the wealth of knowledge I've received, all of it can be crumbled and taken away from me in an instant. And I'll be left with my remembrance. Or I won't be left with anything at all, I apologize. I'll be reincarnated, and I'll be given a new brain and a new flesh suit. That's what happens. And when that happens, there's no recall of the accumulated experience or the identity or the anything of that individual life that you just came out of and entered into a new life. So what I'm saying here is it's very big thing we're all wrestling against here, and if we've all built up this knowledge, well, we need to take it seriously. And I mean, me personally, I don't support this system. I'm not for this American race at all, not even a little bit. And it's not got much gas left. I've been telling people for a while now, you can't do this forever and expect there to not be some sort of point of, I don't know exactly what to call it, a point of, not contention. It will be contention, but a point of stagnation and eventual devolution as a result of shortage of resources. Now, I get pretty upset when when I don't have any water in the house that isn't fluoridated. I can't imagine what's going to happen to everyone else when it's realized for real this time that all the resources have been taken. Everyone's taken them for themselves and consumed them. That is literally going to be a nightmare, and that's something I've been preparing for, to help the people and maybe try to help them see, but at the same time, people get pushed into a survival headset, a purely survival headset where they aren't thinking of heart, they aren't thinking of actually helping anybody, they're thinking of helping themselves, and that's the survival headset that people get into. It's not a point of mockery, it's not a point of I hate you for going into survival mode. It's a reasonable concern that one should have in the times to come that people will not be in their right state of mind. They will be in survival mode. And perhaps it's not, for me at least, I weigh so little, I don't have much muscle. What am I going to do if there's like 4 or 5 people who are all in survival mode and they happen to find that I have a piece of bread on me? That's the kind of thing I'm preparing for, and that's the kind of situation which has been engineered. I didn't set it up this way. This is what this is their magnum opus. This is their final act. And they want it to be absolutely dreadful for every being involved. It matters not where you come from. Everybody, almost everybody, including, I will make mention of those who are now calling themselves dead. They are calling themselves dead. They are essentially showing themselves in my face with merchandise and symbols and straight up with their voices telling me, we're dead. So, that's not me making things up. That's actually just happening now. So that's something to think about as well. It's not any fun admitting all of the people that you've come to know for YouTube or whatever suddenly coming out, and there's this complete tonal shift in everything. Complete tonal shift. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. But once you get into knowing, and it's not just something your mind ponders, it's not just something you think about. When you know for certain, and you have done the thinking about the mind, you will know that the mind is death. And if you want to go back to that, because there are individuals who enjoy it, I guess, having the light turned off, I don't know why. I'm assuming you will have the choice to do that. And if that's really your wish, to go back into the realm of the finite death system, that's not my choice. And it's not going to be the choice that I and many others are going to be making, because this place, it's not just me and a few other people who know what this place is, that know it's the labyrinth of the mind, the labyrinth of the external world. It's not just one or two, it's probably at least 1,000 people that know. Maybe more. So on a planet of 8.8 billion people now, is it? Maybe 7 billion people? Only around 1,000 people in the entire planet know what's actually going on in terms of how this construct works, what it's being used for, which is polarization, or energy harvesting, through dualistic input. So all the dualistic input of your mind creates since thought is a movement, it creates an energetic movement based on either direction. So positive, negative, that both fuels their energy harvest. Even me speaking right now is likely giving them quite a fill. But I really don't care, I guess. Perhaps I should. The main thing I wanted to get out in this video was the idea that the two visions, the two crowns, if you will, the mind and the heart, reflect into the external different creations, and the mind itself reflects into the external destructions. And I would just like to call to that and talk about it. And that's what we've done here. So we've talked about it for around 22 minutes in various forms. And I think that with that, we've given, for the time, a good enough description of how we feel about all of this. So I'll just continue. You might have noticed a change in microphone quality. Just ignore that. There's a lot of TV that you can watch. There's a lot of movies that one could watch. And for me, even the music now, especially the music actually, it's all in the lyrics, all Ice in Chains, Alice in Chains, Man in the Box, Rooster, what's the other one? Rotten Apple especially, Eat of the Apple, So Young, those are some lyrics to the song. It's about reincarnation. All of the media has been set up in a subtle way. All of the publicization, whatever entity is organizing all of that, has allowed for this sort of soft I don't even know what to call it. It's just kind of a soft putting down of these ideas of what this place is. And I'm not gonna recommend anyone watch anything, but this place is hell, and there are even TV programs which have shown us this. South Park. Yeah, we're in the South Park. We're parked in the South, where hell freezes over as a cycle, as a part of its cycle. Dark winter, whatever you want to say. It's all in everything, and yeah, I had a huge amount of attachment built up to this external world as a child. I liked South Park. I liked all the TV shows that you watch, Xavier, Renegade Angel, and all the other stuff. But when you start to realize why it's actually there and what its purpose actually serves, which is both the method of telling the viewer while distracting them, it becomes more and more hard to trust. And yeah, the idea of being led down a blind alley, like they just blind you and they lead you down this alley full of a bunch of holes, it's exactly like that. Or the analogy, you're in the desert and you're looking around for gold and they keep giving you like particulates of copper. Or you're looking in the desert for water and they give you sand to drink. You know, you spend a lot of time analyzing these different, obviously telling methods they have of subtly telling the viewer, you know, this is hell, just in various different ways. And, you know, if I really had the time, I could compile together a video where all of that happens. But it's even in commercials, Alec Baldwin's HBO commercials. I mean, just watch, don't even watch them, actually. I mean, you've probably seen TV, we're all around TV, and especially now, I mean, I walk outside and I see what they're watching on TV, and it's usually, like, really weird and hellish, and especially the commercials that come on. Yeah, I can't really articulate how strange this realm becomes when you see it for what it is. I can't do it. But my vision, my actual external vision, has shifted completely, geometrically speaking, and just how I look at things. When you see death, even in your own mirror, you look in the mirror and then you see it. It's just strange. Because then you don't look at yourself anymore. You know, I feel like you feel like you're living someone else's story. And you feel like you're living the mind's story, his story. Well, who controls the mind? It often doesn't feel like it's me. And to get out of that is the goal, really. That's the only goal. All the goals of the mind they're usually just for the ego's pursuits. You know, you get a job, you start a sports career, you do this, you do that, and I just have no interest in any of that. I have interest in going home, because I'm currently not home. But yeah, I mean, desire. What really calls people to do anything in this realm? Well, it's a desire to do something. If there's the desire to do absolutely nothing in this realm, if there's a desire to do nothing in this realm, then there's a desire to do nothing in this realm, and you'll do other things elsewhere. And that is what we're trying to do, is get our real sight back, because when we were a child, we used to have that, and now we don't. It's not that we don't either, it's just that to access it past all the egoic cargo is quite difficult. And it's not usually something that most people are ready to do in an instant. Usually takes some time. So for now, I will leave it at that.